In this video, we add applications to a custom image with Azure Image Builder and PowerShell. Hello everyone, I'm Travis and this is Seraltos. This is the last of a three-part series on Azure Image Builder. In this video, we add two applications to our custom image using PowerShell customizations. Please be sure to check out the other videos in the series if you have not done so already. Also, please take a second to like, subscribe, share with a friend, and click the bell icon for updates of new content. Also, if you're interested in learning about Windows Virtual Desktop, check out my course on udemy.com, Zero to Hero with Windows Virtual Desktop. The link is below. In the first video, we went over the prerequisites for Azure Image Builder, and in the last video, we deployed an Image Builder template, ran the build of a new image, and created a VM based on that image. We go deeper into installing applications in this video. This video gets fairly technical. I demonstrate adding applications to the image build in a way that hopefully makes sense. There are a few things to keep in mind with customizations in Image Builder. Each customizer has to have a unique name. They run in order they're added to in the template, and if one fails, the entire customization fails. There are several types of customizations available for Azure Image Builder. The PowerShell customizer is one of them. This has several options. You can specify a public URI for a script to run or run commands in line, such as what we did with downloading AZ copy in the previous example. Exit codes can be added to report failures of the script. The script can run with elevated permissions, and an option to use SHA-256 checksum is available. The Linux shell customizer can specify a script URI or run inline commands also. It also supports a 256 checksum. There's a Windows restart customizer, useful if you have applications or drivers that need to be restarted to install properly. There's a file customizer used to download files from a URL. It's recommended only for small files. Another option for file downloads is wget or curl shell commands, or invoke web request with PowerShell. There's also a Windows Update customizer that builds on the community Windows Update provisioner with Packer. Let's move on to what we'll do in the upcoming demo. There's several pieces to this solution. Once you understand how they fit together, it's easy to modify to your own environment. For Image Builder to install the applications, it needs to download the installer packages and supporting files. We put all the installer packages and supporting files into one archive file and download that from an Azure storage account with AZ copy. Then we use a PowerShell script to run the commands to install and configure the software. We could, in theory, use individual inline customizations to install each application. That's what we did with AZ copy. But there is no way to update a deployment. Deployments have to be recreated when they change. That would mean that we'd have to remove and redeploy a template each time the inline customization was updated. By using a script, we can modify the script without impacting the deployment. Let's review the specific steps we'll take in the demo to add Notepad++ and Foxit Reader to the image. We start with the VM we created in the previous video. We use this to gather all the install files and test the install commands. It's important to test the script to make sure that it can install the application without user interactions prior to adding it to Image Builder. It's more difficult to troubleshoot errors in Image Builder than it is on the VM. From there, we'll create a PowerShell script and an archive file with all the applications and support files needed. We'll add the install script to a public GitHub location and the zip file to an Azure storage account. The script location has to be public unless using managed service identities. For this example, it'll be public. Once we have the file and script in place, we finish the customizations. We already have the customization that downloads and extracts AZ copy. We use AZ copy to download the archive, then extract the files to the temp directory. Last, we run the script that installs the software. I'll make all the scripts and templates available at the GitHub link below. I'll also include links to the install files for the two applications. I can't supply the actual install files. The process of creating and testing software install commands can take some trial and error to get right. I provide working examples for the two applications we install in this video. But I had to remove and recreate the test VM a couple times to get the scripts to install software without errors or user interaction. To recap, the steps we cover in the demo are first to download the install files to the test VM we created in the last video. Then we create and test a script that installs the applications. After that, we add the scripts to a public GitHub repo. Then we create an archive of our install files and upload that to an Azure storage account. Next, we build an updated template with the customizations that downloads the files and runs the install script. If that all goes well, we build a VM from the new managed image and verify the applications are installed. Please join me in the test VM we set up previously to get started. We start by logging into the test VM we created in our last video. We use this VM to make sure that the applications install correctly. Let's open up the C temp directory. We'll go to File Explorer. Next, I'll copy the install files to the C temp directory. For this example, I use the Foxit Reader installer, the Notepad++ installer, and a config.model.xml file. The config.model file changes the default profile for Notepad++ to prevent auto updates in that application. I'll add a link to the Notepad++ community that explains how to create that file. I also have links for both the Foxit Reader and the Notepad++ download. Matter of fact, let's go over to that now. I'm going to copy the install-applications.ps1 file to the desktop on this computer. This file, along with all of the other files I'll use, are available on my GitHub repo. Let's edit the file in PowerShell ISE. This is the script that Image Builder will eventually run during the build process. We'll walk through the commands interactively at first to make sure there's no problems before we add them to Image Builder. There are some notes at the top with links to where the application files came from, as well as the information from the Notepad++ community about changing default settings in that application. The first region of the script is used to create a log file and a log function. I added error handling to this script so we can see errors if they occur during the image build. Let's select and run this section. And again, we're running this interactively now, but that's to verify everything works correctly before the image build process runs this script. I'll scroll down. Next is the region to install Foxit Reader. This is a pretty common way to install MSI packages with PowerShell. It starts a process, msi.exec.exe, passing in the MSI file, and the quiet switch and some other parameters. All these settings are documented with the Foxit Reader Enterprise Deployment Guide. After the install, it uses a test path to verify the executable exists. This level of testing and logging is not required by Image Builder. It's just my way to test the install. It'll write to the log file indicating if it found the executable or not. I put that all in a try-catch block for error handling. If there is an error during the software install, the catch block will grab that message and write it to the log. Let's highlight and run this section of code. It should just take a few seconds to run. That finished, and if we minimize PowerShell ISE, we can see we have Foxit Reader on the desktop. We can open that up. There's the application that installed correctly. Now if we close this and go into our temp directory, we have that software install file. Let's open that up. And here it shows that Foxit Reader was installed. Let's move on to the next section to install Notepad++. Notepad++ uses an executable instead of an MSI. The first line of code starts the process passing in the installer executable with the /s for a silent argument. After that, it copies the config.model.xml file to the program file directory, then changes the name of the update folder. After that, there's a test to see if the program executable is there, along with the same error handling as the Foxit Reader. Let's highlight and run this section of code. We'll minimize this. And if we go to Start, there's Notepad++. When I originally worked through this install, it would present a message saying that it needed to be updated. By following the steps in that community post, I was able to prevent that from happening on the default install. We'll close that and go back to Software Install. And there it shows that Notepad++ has been installed. Notice in both cases there were no errors and no user prompts to install the software. If we did get an error or a prompt, that would need to be addressed in the install file. Image Builder can't respond to prompts when the image is built. That's why we want to run through this script to verify it works correctly before submitting it to Image Builder. I spent some time to get this script together before I started recording. The process took a couple hours, and I had to delete and recreate the VM a couple times just to make sure it works correctly. It's really important to make sure that all of the install files are together and the commands will install the file without user interaction before you continue on with Image Builder. In the example coming up, this script has to be available from a public endpoint. I have the one we're working with right now posted on GitHub. Here's the repository with all the scripts and template files. I also included a README. This includes what file goes with what video. The install application script is the one we were just working with. You're welcome to use this script as you follow along. If, however, you have different application versions, that requires updating the install commands. For example, if you're using a version of Foxit Reader other than 1.01, or a version of Notepad++ different from 7.8.8. If that was the case, you'd need to create this file on your own site with the updated installers. It could be GitHub or a public website. Remember not to put anything confidential in this script. Next, we'll create the archive and upload it to the storage account. Let's go back to our test VM. We can close that. In the temp directory are 3 files, the Foxit Reader installer and the 2 files we used for Notepad++. Let's select those and add them to an archive file. We'll rename this to software.zip. Copy this archive file to your local machine and go back to the Azure portal. The zip file is on my local desktop now, and we'll go back to the portal. Next, we create a new storage account for the archive. You can use an existing storage account if you have one available. I'm going to go back to our resource group for Azure Image Builder. I'll add a new storage account. I'll give the storage account a name. That name has to be globally unique. I'll call it CIR Software Build. I'll add it to the same region as Image Builder. For my example, it's West US 2. And change replication to local redundant storage. The rest can be left as default. Let's go to Review and Create. And once validation passes, click Create. And let's give this a minute to finish. That finished, let's go to the resource. Once we're in the storage account, open Storage Explorer. Right-click on blob containers and create blob container. Give the container a name. I'll use software resource for this example. You can leave it as private and click Create. Let's go to Software Resources and click Upload. We'll select a file, and on my desktop is the software.zip file. I'll select that and add it to the container. We'll click Upload. That's going to take a couple minutes to finish uploading. Let's move on to building the customizations next. But before we do that, let's clean up some resources we no longer need. We can delete the VM and related resources we created for testing the script. Let's go to Resource Groups. We'll go into our AIB Managed IDRG. We can delete the VM and all related resources we created for testing the script. Let's select all of the VM-related resources. We've got disks, virtual network, public IP address, network security group, and notice that they all have the same name, and virtual machine. Be very careful not to delete the managed identity or the storage account. We can also delete that image. That was the managed image we created in the previous video. We don't need that any longer. So once those are selected, go to delete. Make sure you're not clicking on delete resource group. You only want to delete the resources we have selected. I'll click yes to confirm. And if at this point it's asking you to enter in the name of the resource group, that means you clicked the wrong delete. So don't continue, go back and make sure you've just selected the virtual machine related resources and try again. And I'll confirm the deletion. Next, we can't update the existing image builder template deployment. The only way to add our new customizations is to delete what's out there and recreate it. Now that's not a big deal because we're using templates, but it is something to keep in mind. So let's delete the previous template deployment. Let's go back to PowerShell. I'm going to open up the file we worked with in video 2. That's download templates. And if we go down to remove the template deployment, you can see here's the command, remove AZ image builder template. It requires the template name and the resource group name. And if we scroll up, we should be able to find that image template name. So I'll highlight that and hit F8 to add it to memory. And up a little higher is image resource group. I'll highlight that and click F8 again. Now that we have those variables defined, let's go back to remove the template deployment. And I'll highlight that and click F8 to continue. This too will take a couple minutes to finish. While we're waiting for that to finish, let's get the shared access signature for the archive file we uploaded to the storage account. We'll go back to the portal, and here's the storage account. Let's go to blob containers. Here's our software resource and software.zip. If we scroll all the way over, we can get an option here to generate a SAS. This will create a shared access signature. I'll change the expiration for a week out. And scroll down, we can generate the SAS token and URL. Keep in mind, if the shared access signature expires, or if those keys for the storage account get rotated, this URL will no longer work, and you'll have to generate a new one. We'll copy that blob SAS URL to clipboard. Now let's go back to VS Code, and we'll close download templates, and this time we'll open the file download app install templates. This is the same download templates file we worked with in the previous video, only it updates a different template file, and there's a couple additional parameters for updating that template. As before, run the section to download the template. This will overwrite the template from the previous example, that's fine. Highlight all that and run the commands. It'll ask to replace the template. Yes. Let's open the template it just downloaded. Open the Win10 multi-template under the template directory. This is the same as previous also with a couple customizations added. Go to the customization section. We have the get AZ copy command that downloads and extracts the AZ copy just like before. After that, we use AZ copy to download the archive file with the shared access signature. The archive file is saved and then extracted to the temp directory. The next section is a PowerShell script URI. Notice it calls the script to run, then runs it elevated. That may not be needed for this, but it makes for a good example. We are missing the shared access key in the script URI. Let's go back to the download app install template and we'll add that. Here we have our variables and we have a spot for the file archive shared access signature. Let's paste that in. There it is. Also make sure that the resource group is correct. The install script referenced is the one that I created that's available on my GitHub page. If you're using a different install script, you'll need to update this URL. Let's highlight and run all these variables to add them to memory. Make sure you've selected all of them. Like before, the next block of code updates the template file with the variables including the shared access signature and the path to the PowerShell script. Highlight and run this block of code. Let's go back to the Win10 multi-template. Notice that the shared access signature and the path to the PowerShell install file are all there, along with all of the other variables we needed to update on this template. We can close this template. And now we're back at the download app install template. Let's run the deployment next. Highlight the new AZ resource group deployment command and hit F8 to run. This should take a minute. You can pause here and come back once it's finished. That's finished. We'll start with the build process next. Highlight and run the Start AZ Image Builder template command. This will take some time to finish. I'll pause the video here and come back once it's done. That finished, let's go back to the portal. We should see a new image in the resource group. There's our image. Let's go back to PowerShell. And next, let's create a VM from that image, and then we'll log in to see if our customizations took effect. We'll highlight these 3 lines of code. Under Create a VM to test, hit F8 to run. And we'll enter in a username and password. This will take a couple minutes to finish. I'm going to pause here and come back once it's done. The VM's created. Let's go to the portal and grab its public IP address. Here it is. Let's log in. There we go. And like before, if you experience a delay logging in at the Windows modules installer, you should only experience that the first time you log in. You may have to wait for it to finish before proceeding. Here we are logged into the VM and we've got Foxit Reader on the desktop. We can open up the application. There it goes. And if we go to Start, there's Notepad++. And that opens up just like before. Let's go to File Explorer. Open the C drive and go to Temp. Here are the install source files. And if we open up the software install log, it shows that it ran and installed the software. This is great. It did exactly what we expected it to do. It downloaded and extracted the software install files and then ran the script to install the software. But what happens if you do run into a problem? Let's go over some troubleshooting steps next. There are a few spots to check for causes of what went wrong. If the software doesn't install, you can check this log file to see if there's any output indicating an error. You may want to see the actual template that Image Builder uses to build the image. Let's go back to the portal. And if we go into the AIB Managed IDRG resource group, we have all of our VM-related resources, the storage account we set up for the software, our managed identity, and our custom image. Let's click Show Hidden Types. Now we have another item that shows up, the Image Template Win10 Multi. Let's click on that and go to Export Template. This is the actual template that Image Builder uses to build the image. It should match the one we set up locally, But if it doesn't, this might indicate a source of an error. Next, let's view the build logs. Go to the resource groups and find the image builder resource group that starts with IT. There's a storage account in this resource group. This is where logs and other information is stored during the build process. Let's open that. Go to Storage Explorer. And go to Blob Containers. Go to Packer Logs. There's a folder with an ID assigned. Let's go into that. And here's the customization log. Open that by double-clicking. And then click here to begin download. There's a lot of data in this file, but you can search to find clues to what may have went wrong. For example, if I search for AZ copy, I can locate the commands that ran for that customization. That covers it. We got our install files and created an install script on the test computer, added our script to GitHub, and uploaded an archive file to a storage account. Then we updated a new template file with the customizations and deployed it. After that, we built a new image from the deployment and created a VM with the software already installed. If you made it to this point, thank you. There's a lot here, and it took me a few days to create a working example. I hope this saves you time in your own deployment. Don't forget to subscribe, like, click the bell icon for updates, and thanks for watching.